Hey guys, someone wanted me to make a video on losing friendships and psychoses, and sorry, I've got dry lips. And I thought, yeah, that would be a good video to make, but it's also hard. Let me try to explain what I mean, because I suppose it's kind of like I'm getting into a philosophical debate in my mind, trying to think of how I'd answer the question. Because, yeah, losing friendships, I don't know if I've certainly lost a lot of friendships, but I kind of think of friendships in a strange way. I don't know. In my childhood, I had, yeah. So when I was very young, obviously I had a very tumultuous childhood, but I was moved around a lot. So from the age of probably like 2, my mum told me once that I got kicked out of nursery at 2 years old. Like I was just an incredibly naughty child, like untamable. And so I got kicked out of nursery at 2. And then I remember moving around several schools. Maybe not several, maybe like 4 schools by the time I was 11. So a couple nurseries, primaries. Yeah, I can't remember most of it. Most of them? 3, 4, yeah. And then when I was about 11, we moved over to another place in the countryside, very secluded old house. And I then went to school then, and then I moved schools again shortly after that. So I was only in that school for 2 years, and I moved to another school. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that I've never really, in my life made long-term friends. I think this is why it's so hard for me to answer this question, is that I've always just came in and out of people's lives. I've never felt like I've really truly connected with anybody or had a friend in that way. Sad, actually, the more I think about it. But I remember reading something, when I left home, I'd had an extremely isolated childhood. Like I lived in the middle of nowhere, and I had a couple of friends that I would consider good friends when I was that age, but I didn't see them that much, and there wasn't that much of a friendship, I suppose. And when they got girlfriends at about 16, 17, they went off and did their own things. But I was very isolated when I was growing up, and so I got used to spending a lot of time on my own and thinking up my own imaginations and spending time in my imaginations and stuff. So I kind of just didn't really connect with anybody, and I'd been so used to moving around constantly that it didn't really bother. It never had bothered me, and I did have good friends, but when I had my first psychoses, I had a group of friends at that time that I'd hang around with, but even then I was like the outsider of the group. So I'd go and hang out with them occasionally, but then I'd be doing my own thing, and they'd be like, "Where are you?" and they'd come and try and get me and stuff, and I'd be like alone in the woods and this sort of thing. And and so I've always kind of been an outsider. And when I left home, I had this genesis. I went to stay with a friend because I'd been kicked out of my home. Family home, and I went to stay with a friend I knew from school, and they took me to a library, and this was like the first time I'd ever really picked up a book with the intent of reading it. I'd always hated books at school, and it was a book by Raymond Plant on Hegel, and it was about philosophy being the consolation of religion, the thing that binds religion together. And for me that was like an immense flash, because my isolated childhood, I'd never been around these ideas, I'd never paid attention in class. In fact, I was in the special needs classes in school, in my high school, so third sets, and then sometimes I was in the special needs classes, and I had like an ESA and all that sort of stuff. So I'd never been at all interested in books, or even been I don't know how to explain it really, at all kind of that way orientated. And I saw this book for the first time, and I remember opening it up to a random page and seeing this line, and then that kind of consumed me. And then I started looking for lots of books, and I went on this journey of trying to understand things. And one book that I read, which was Nikola Tesla's autobiography, that just summed me up in a way, the way that he felt about things and the world, and the way that he talked about having Earth parents and then space parents, and that kind of related to me on a deep level, because that's how I think I've always felt. I've always felt like I've got Earth people, and then like people beyond in a weird way. Not literal aliens or, you know, gods or demons or anything like that, but just that kind of feeling. And yeah, his autobiography is a really good thing to read, actually. I think if you're a little bit strange or a little bit an outsider, Nikola Tesla's autobiography is a really cool thing to read. Really resonated with me and how my childhood was. And I think then, as I kind of grew up, I was moving around still from place to place, a bit of a vagabond, really. I never stayed in the same place for longer than a year, so I would make friends, and I would like those friends, and they would like me, but then I would have a psychotic episode, and I would just break away. And I think some of the hardest stuff emotionally about that is never giving anyone an explanation. I think that's been something really difficult, actually, because I have really liked people and wanted to be friends, and I don't know. This is a very difficult question for me to answer, because it brings up a lot of stuff. That stuff's very difficult for me, I think. But yeah, I think never giving people explanations when I've disappeared, that's probably something that's been the hardest about Psychosis, because I've been on my own mission, my own journey. And when I did make friends, I would just disappear. And there was a group, I've had a few groups of friends, but there was the last group of friends that I had were all in their 50s, 60s. This was just before COVID. I was living in this old abandoned building at the time, and this old man took me in, because I used to go to the local pub to charge my phone. And this old man took me in and gave me a spare room. He was really nice about it. He was like, look, you don't have to worry about paying the first month. I'll get that for you. Just sort yourself out and everything. And then I stayed there, and I lived there for about a year. And during that year, I got to know all the oldies and goldies in the pub. You know, all these they were so crazy. They were lovely people. And they kind of took me in, and they were like they were really good. It was really formative years for me, actually, because they kind of helped me control my rambling. So I used to go on these insane rambles, like back then when I was about 21, 22, about all kinds of things, so detached from reality as well. And they kind of helped me bring that back down in a way, and spent a lot of time with me. That's the first time I went to the hospital to get medication, because the old man took me in, and I ended up having a psychotic episode when I got a job, because I really wanted to pay him rent and do things properly. And then I lost the job again because of another episode, and I thought, no, this time, you know, I can't let anyone else down. So I went to the hospital to try and get help, but then I've told you about that experience. But yeah, it's a really difficult question for me to ask. I've still got friends, I've still got people that I talk to, but again, it's that I don't know what it is. I still feel very disconnected from people. And I guess I've never really felt lonely, though. I think that's something that I've never really felt lonely. I don't know why. I think because I'm involved in something in my mind, like a thing that I want to do, and goals and objectives and purpose, I think that shields you from a lot of loneliness. But also, one thing that I've learned is that friendships never truly end if they're real friendships. I know people that I've known for 10, 12 years, and occasionally our paths meet again and we rekindle the friendship as if it was yesterday, and it's exactly the same as it was back 10 years ago, you know. And I feel like friendships never truly end, and so true friendships never truly end. And so if you do have friends, that's another thing. I would say that everybody's my friend in a way, and that I feel like that's always been something that I've always deeply resonated with, is that I kind of get along with everybody and I can see the friendship immediately, and I feel like I've known people for a long time quite quickly. And so I think if you struggle with friendships, reframing it is a good way, and to see people as connections or possible connections, even if it's only temporary, and then try to establish common ground. And I don't know, I'm giving advice about something I'm very poor at, so it feels quite fake. But yeah, sorry, I don't think I will be able to answer this question. Other than if you lose friends and acquaintances due to psychoses, I would say that the best thing to try and do from my mistakes is explain yourself, and explain how difficult it was, and apologise for anything that you might have done wrong, or a nuisance that you might have been, and then try to appeal to the common good in people, and explain yourself. Because I think if I could go back in time, because I don't know, maybe I'm a product of my childhood, and because maybe I moved around so much and I was never able to have consistent friendships, and that was just all the way through till my late teens, that I'd never really connected with anybody, and so that's kind of the permanent thing that happens with me now, is that I never connect with anybody, and I travel around and do my own thing. And I don't mind doing that. I feel most comfortable doing that. Definitely think that there is some issues there, with my ability to connect to people and form long-term friendships, but I'm dealing with that. But yeah, I would say that from my own mistakes, try to explain to people and try to put the burden of explanation on yourself, because people, especially with psychoses, they don't understand psychoses, and it's quite scary for people as well, because it is a manifestation of the void in a way. And so if you can find a way to articulate yourself to people, or even find new friends, that's what I wanted my Discord to be. And I am going to work on something like that in the future, social spaces for people, because I really do want to lead to myself making a charity where we can have social groups, properly run social groups all across the world one day. One can dream. So people can form friendships with people that understand them. But yeah, I closed my Discord down because I was just a bit worried about how the moderation would go, and I'd seen all these horror stories as I'd researched it more and more, because these things, DMs, like people can DM each other, I was worried about bad characters, bad actors, and then worrying about protecting people that were in my Discord, and how I would, shelter or accommodate good relationships and not allow bad relationships to creep in. So I deleted that Discord. But yeah, in the future I definitely am hopeful that I can work on my own ability to make friends, and I can work on helping other people make good friendships. But yeah, psychosis is a really difficult one, and also if you're not someone inclined to making friends, it's a very difficult one. But don't underestimate the power of purpose either. And you're on a planet with 8 billion people, and I think about that all the time, is that like it or not, there's always people around you, and you're on a planet with 8 billion people, and if you pick a purpose, like something you want to achieve, something that you want to do, then you're never truly alone. There's always people aiming for the same things and working towards the same ends, and that makes me feel like I belong and I'm never alone. And then the greats as well, people like Nikola Tesla, these isolated figures that worked on something that they truly believed in. That makes me not feel alone either. You're sort of together in spirit in a way. So that's one way to look at it. Oh, blimey. I've probably made a mess of this video just because it is a very difficult one to talk about without going into a sob story, really. But yeah, I hope I've done a good job explaining that. Have a good day.